Are you looking to build an exceptional team? Our hiring toolkit bundle at LuAnnNigara.com/store is your comprehensive source for success. Craft compelling job descriptions, know the right interview questions to ask, and implement a thorough evaluation process so you get the right person. These were developed in collaboration with my cousin Eileen Hahn and based on her 40 years of experience in building exceptional teams, plus my insights from 1,000 plus interviews. Our toolkits are tested and proven. Whether you're scaling from 1 to 3 or from 3 to 10 or from 10 to 20, the hiring toolkit bundle provides the guidance that you can use to plan your hiring strategy effectively. Go to LuAnnNigara.com/store and invest in your success by investing in the success of your team. Welcome to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today's episode is a tiny bit different in the best way. I'm not the one hosting the conversation. Today, I'm the guest. Over the years, I've had the privilege of being invited onto some incredible podcasts, conversations where with that host, we've dug into business, mindset, leadership, and the real lessons that I've learned from decades in this industry. So in this special crossover series, I'm sharing with you some of these episodes from other podcasts brought here to my podcast feed. These are powerful conversations that often offer a different lens, because when I'm in the guest seat, you might hear different stories, different angles, and new insights that don't always come up when I'm the one asking the questions. And you know what the bonus is? If you like what you hear in this particular episode, I highly encourage you to check out that host's show, right? So you might like more of their episodes, and we will link their podcast in the show notes and more about them as well in the show notes so that you can now begin to learn from them and their brilliance as well. All right, let's get into it. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. How can you build your thought leadership platform? Listen in to this panel discussion from our last summit on this episode of the Speaking Your Brand podcast. More and more women are making an impact by starting businesses, running for office, and speaking up for what matters. With my background as a TV political analyst, entrepreneur, and speaker, I interview and coach purpose-driven women to shape their brands, grow their companies, and become recognized as influencers in their field. This is Speaking Your Brand, your place to learn how to persuasively communicate your message to your audience. Hi there, and welcome to the Speaking Your Brand podcast. This is your host, Carol Cox. I was listening to the panel that we had on building your thought leadership platform, and it is so good. There are so many takeaways that you can use as speakers, as entrepreneurs, as content creators, as podcasters, that I decided to go ahead and release that prior panel discussion here on the podcast so that you can start thinking about how to build your own thought leadership platform. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We are having an incredible day. I love to see all of your comments in the chat and all the support that you have for our women speakers and the amazing job that they are doing. I talked earlier about our new Thought Leader Academy program. If you would like to check it out, go to speakingyourbrand.com/academy.
Now I am going to introduce the panelists for our Building Your Thought Leadership Platform panel. Now, these three women I specifically selected for this panel because I am so impressed with all of the work that they've done over the years, and I know them personally. So I know not only the work that they've done, but what kind, generous women that they are. So let me introduce first LuAnn Nigara, who began her career more than 30 years ago as a co-owner of Window Works, an award-winning window treatment and awning retailer in Livingston, New Jersey. She's the host of the top-rated interior design podcast called A Well-Designed Business, which recently surpassed 600 episodes and 3 million downloads. Amazing. Her podcast was recently named in Architectural Digest as one of the top 10 podcasts listened to by interior designers. And I know LuAnn has been sharing about the summit on her social media. So every time I've seen a sign up for the summit that has an email address related to an interior design company, I know it's from you, LuAnn. So thank you so much for sharing it with your audience. Our next panelist is Dr. Karen Wilson, who's the founder of ChildNexus.com, which aims to dispel myths about issues related to pediatric mental health, disseminate information, and help parents make informed decisions when choosing providers for their children. She's also a clinical neuropsychologist with a private practice in Los Angeles, where she specializes in the neuropsychological assessment of children and adolescents. And Karen speaks frequently, now virtually, of course, but before COVID, in person at national conferences and has been published in national journals. Our third panelist is Tammy Lally, the published author, TEDx speaker, and certified money coach. Her TEDx talk on money shame has been viewed over 2 million times. She helps others master their finances by first conquering their emotions around money, then by creating a comprehensive financial plan. Welcome to our panel.
Thank you so much, Carol. I'm so thrilled to be here.
I am thrilled to have you here. I'm putting my glasses back on so I can read the chat questions as they come in. So I have some questions prepared for the panelists, but we want the questions from you, for those of you listening, about their thought leadership journey, things that they did along the way so that to build these incredible platforms that they have now. So while we wait for those questions to come in, let me ask our first question to you, LuAnn. How did you get to 3 million downloads? Because as a podcaster myself, that's not an easy feat. What are specific things that you think attribute to the success of your podcast?
Number one, I think being super, super in tune and touch with the needs of who my very tight niche audience is, and never losing sight of that. And for me, I know that business is business, and we could be any business owner and substitute that name for interior designer, but for building a platform, go really, really tiny and talk to one person, and then the others will come. And so it's that. I think it's really having a great handle on the needs of the niche audience. It's consistency. It's come heck or high water, the show goes on. It's a marketing machine. It's putting out the shows, and it's, having the presence on social media. And I also say live events. Every single time I've gone and done a live event, and for all of us as speakers here in the beginning, it's that big combination of free and paid, but every event, something comes from it. So another listener comes who tells another, or an opportunity comes and creates another situation. So I say those are like the 3 pillars, the 3 keys.
That's great, LuAnn. And I know that just from knowing you and watching you, you are extremely generous with your podcast guests, with women in your audience, with your sponsors, with everyone who is involved, that you give so much.
Yeah, you're right, Carol, because that is another key of it is the collaboration, is just really, truly in your core, knowing there's enough for everybody. Just keep sharing, just keep telling everybody what an amazing, business coach and what amazing speaking coach Carol is. And it all goes around and comes around because we know that when we each teach the clients that we work with to go after their ideal client, we know that the most amazing interior designer is not the right designer for every client. So it's okay if you tell and share about your friend who maybe is in the same industry or a similar industry, because you're not going to get a yes from the same person anyway. So why not share it, right?
Absolutely. Karen, I have a question for you. What role has speaking played in building your thought leadership platform?
That's a really great question. And I think for me, speaking has really given me the opportunity to really highlight my expertise. And it's really helped me to expand my reach in a way that I had not anticipated and had not planned for. Because in my industry, as a clinical neuropsychologist and someone who is trained in research and clinical skills, we're taught to kind of teach to our own audience. So we teach in a classroom setting, we communicate information to other professionals within our industry. And, by doing the work that I do, I'm working with families who have kids who are struggling. And as I was sitting in, and I've sat in a number of professional conferences, and I'm hearing all of this great information, and none of that information was being disseminated to the people who really needed it and could act on it. And I feel like speaking has given me an opportunity to take the information that I'm being exposed to at these professional conferences and through my experience and training and expertise, and share it with people who can really do something with that information and impact lives, which is basically what I want to do and what is my mission as a clinical psychologist and now as a speaker. And that has really been my goal in more recent years, and it has really moved the needle in terms of developing my platform.
We have a question from the audience here, which is an excellent question, is how to define thought leadership platform. So what exactly does that mean? So I'll answer that first, and I would love to hear from the rest of you women as well. So to me, a thought leadership platform is related to speaking. It could be writing a book. It could be having a podcast. It could be hosting an event. And a lot of times as we start doing one, then we ended up doing the next one, and then we do the next one. So we're creating this platform where people can find us in different ways. Some people are podcast listeners, other people are book readers, other people like going to events. And so you start with one and then you branch out to others. And I know that all three of you have done that. I'm going to bring Tammy in now. Tammy, what impact has it had for you to have a TEDx talk that has had over 2 million views now?
Wow. The short answer is it changed everything in the message, the reach. My expertise changed in terms of my being able to work with people all over the world. So, prior to TED, I was basically, a local money coach in Winter Park and helping a lot of the local community. And after the talk, overnight, things really changed. And what's been really extraordinary about it is two things. The talk went viral in 2018, so just a couple years ago. And prior to that time, I had a story. And the story was I had to have an office. I had to see everybody face to face. I couldn't go online. It wasn't going to be the same. It wasn't going to be as personal. And I had my business coach kept telling me, get online, get online. Well, I'm slow to grow because I have a lot of perfectionism and insecurities. So when that happened, I had no choice. So it pushed me into coaching online as well as over the phone. And what I learned about myself is that I was actually more effective on the computer, online and on the phone, because when you see people in person as a coach, it's kind of like a therapist. There's a lot of emotion happening in the room when you talk about money. So I would see maybe 7 people a day. Now, that's a lot of energy. And what I found is that I started developing a lot of fatigue, and I was often quite sick. I'd often get colds a lot, because I hugged the people that came in. That was part of the problem. So it did so many things, but it pushed me out of my comfort zone. And that was the first thing. It got me out of the story I was telling myself that was completely false. And then it also helped me reach a worldwide audience that let me see that money and money shame is universal. It doesn't affect the people in the United States. It's not just this class of people. It's everybody. It's everybody. And everybody has a similar story about it. So it just gave me just so much more passion about, okay, I'm doing the right thing here. And when Ted picked it up, it was just complete validation that extraordinarily hard day and the days leading up and that day of, which was I had so much compassion watching today. I've never spoken before in my life. That was my first speaking engagement, was the TED Talk. Outside of going to a church, and talking at church or talking in front of small groups of women, but I had never done anything like that. Yeah.
I did not realize that, Tammy, that was your first official speaking engagement. Way to go all in for your very first one.
Right?
And I know I talk about Tammy a lot on the podcast because she's such a great example of taking a very personal story and universalizing, but also being willing to be real and authentic and vulnerable with your story. So LuAnn, let me come back to you. Do you ever get vulnerability hangovers? Because I'm sure you've had discussions on the podcast after 600 episodes where you're like, oh, did I share that? Did I want to share that?
Well, the famous line that I always say is, the show is, it can be edited, but don't worry, 80% of the edits are me. I think I'll listen to it. I'll be like, what are you doing down that rabbit hole? Shut up and come back. But I'll tell you what, to be super vulnerable about it, which is really interesting because it's just happening now. And here I go. This is what I do. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I shouldn't, but I'm gonna. The 600th episode. If you remember, on my 1-year anniversary in podcasting, you interviewed me. And so for the 600th episode, I coincidentally had just interviewed 2 writers in our space, in the interior design space. And literally each one of them, unbeknownst to the other, as we hung up our off-air conversation after the interview, said, I would just love to interview you one day. And I was like, I've got a 600th show coming up. And so the first woman, I said, oh, would you do that? Yes. 2 weeks later, another writer says the same thing. I'd love to interview. So we decided that the 2 of them are going to go into cahoots and they're going to interview me together. And they did. And the show came out a week ago tomorrow. Well, I'm going to tell you what. I have asked every person in my inner circle. That outro is ridiculous. I should have just cut the show when I said decide to be excellent. I'm going to I know 3,000 people already heard it, but if I change the show today, the next 6,000 people won't hear that stupid intro, right? Outro. And so what happens is I got one person on my team is like, LuAnn, I think it was really heartfelt. I think it was good. Another person on my team, I know you said the word constant wrong 2 times. Constant, I putzed over these words. And when I was recording, I'm like, whatever. And now I'm like, this is what you left up as your best work. So yeah, I'm out there with things that are, not so sure there should be out there.
I do the same thing sometimes. I'm like, not that many people have downloaded this yet. Maybe I can change it, but I don't. I make myself not change it. And I want to hear from those of you in the chat, if you are podcasters, especially, if you've ever done what LuAnn and just talked about, where you're like, oh, maybe I should change that after the fact, because I think it happens to a lot of us. Karen, my next question is for you and also about vulnerability hangover. So all the speaking that you're doing virtually now and then in person in the past, have you ever had a vulnerability hangover where you're wondering, did you share too much? Or, tell us a little bit about how you approach your speaking engagements and how personal you get.
To be honest, I had just heard about vulnerability hangover from your podcast not too long ago. And at first I was listening to it, I'm thinking, I've never had a vulnerability hangover. Maybe it's because I'm not sharing enough personal information. But I think when I look back at it and I think about vulnerability hangover, I think I have had it as a result of decisions I've made in moving toward more speaking, more visibility, and stepping more into my thought leadership. And when I think about that, I think about walking away from what the industry says that I should be doing as a clinical neuropsychologist. So in my field, I'm trained, we have 6 years of training. We have 3 years of postdoctoral training if you want to specialize, which I did. And then you're expected to go into academia and teach, do research, and if you're trained as a clinician, as I am, do some clinical work. And I did all of those things. And I was the quintessential overachiever, where I got early tenure. I was head of a graduate program. I was department chair. And this is where people aspire to be. And what I did after achieving all of those things and realizing that I wanted to make a bigger impact, I knew that if I was going to make a bigger impact, I could not do it staying in that place and staying in that industry box that I was in, even though this is where I was supposed to be. And so what I did at the end of December is I retired from the university system and left that position, left a full professor, left a tenured position, and stepped out. And I think that that's where I hit my vulnerability, because people were asking me, what are you going to do? Why would you leave a tenured position? Don't you know that in 10, 15 years, you'll have full benefits? And I couldn't wait 15 years to step into what I feel that I was called to do. And I felt that it was more important for me to step out now and to make an impact now than to wait 15 years to get benefits and then step out on that. And so I think the vulnerability hangover came when I made that decision, because it was very vulnerable in terms of, this is what I'm doing. I'm stepping away from this. This is why. And there is also the possibility that I could fail, right? And I think that when you step out and do something that goes against the status quo, that is not expected for the box, whatever box that you're in, it makes you more vulnerable, because again, you wonder about failure, and that's a mindset issue. And then you also get the criticisms from people. I had a woman who I respected, who was older and who had retired and been in the industry for 20 some years, who said, why would you do that? Don't you know that you can retire from the system and you can teach for the rest of your life? You basically have a job for the rest of your life. And so I think the hangover was after I left and having to deal with the pushback and the questioning and what does that mean? And you're turning down you no longer have a 6-figure salary. What are you going to do? And I think that's where the vulnerability came in, because it made me second guess my decision for a split second. I didn't stay there.
That is very brave and bold of you, Karen, to do that. And I totally hear you about, if you don't do it now and do where you want to go with yourself, then when else to do it. So thank you for sharing that. We do have a question for Tammy about TED Talks. So one person wanted to know is, how did you get selected for your TED Talk? And then how long did you prepare for it?
This is a good story. I'm going to try to keep it brief. Backstory is this, I always wanted to do like a TED Talk. And that particular year, the beginning of 2017, it was just on my list, my goal list, the New Year's, it was on there. And I actually have spoken in front of groups now that I think about it, but not in that prepared way with TED. But anyway, so I had an event in January at the university in Florida. There was a college in Orlando, where I spoke to the business team or school students. And when that was complete, the woman that facilitated it said, you really should take this and do a TED Talk. And I was like, I'm going to do a TED Talk. And of course I'm doing it. And she's like, well, when are you doing it? Where are you doing it? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm doing one. And you just validated that I'm going to do it. It was just crazy. So I said to her, I really need a speaking coach. This is a true story. And she said, well, I know somebody that's great. And I said, who? Carol. And Carol and I had met the year earlier, where I was there and was the speaker at one of her groups. And I had told my story. So on the way home in the car, I called Carol and I said, hey, do you do TED Talks? You do TED? And Carol said, yeah, well, which one are you doing? And I said, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. And she says, well, have you applied? I didn't know you had to. I didn't know anything. So fast forward, I'm sure it was just synchronicity, and Carol was reached out by TEDx Orlando, who was restarting, looking for a speaker. She mentioned my name, the organizer. I was actually coaching a family member of hers, and she's like, I know her. And then they invited me, is the truth. That's the truth. They invited me to be a speaker at the TEDx Orlando. And so when you do a local event like that, there's a specific amount of talks that are submitted to TED.com, which is the mother, right? The big mama. And TED has a selection process for that year, and my talk was selected. So it was just an extraordinary, synchronistic. But what I want you to hear is that it was always my intention. How I was going to get there, I didn't know. And then it just lined up, and I said yes. Because when the organizer from TEDx Orlando called talking about vulnerability hangover, and she said, would you do it? I said yes. And my talk's very personal, and I had to call my mother out, and I had to talk about my brother. And you don't do that in my family. You don't talk about so when I hung up the phone for the next 3 days, I was in a shame spiral about how am I going to do this? How am I going to not hurt my mother? I was always protecting my mother, and I did it anyway. And my mother understood and moved into her own healing process as a result of it. So
thank you for sharing that, Tammy. And a couple of things that stood out for me is, number one, be involved in your local community. I know it's a little bit more challenging now because we don't have in-person events, but a lot of community organizations are doing virtual events. It doesn't have to be necessarily a TED chapter, but just community groups, business groups, networking groups, because that's how word gets around when they are looking for speakers for different events, including TEDx. And the other thing, Tammy, that I loved is that you said yes. Even though it felt scary, you still said yes. And look at where you are today. Mm-hmm. All right, LuAnn, let's go back to you. We still have a few minutes left in this panel discussion, so keep your questions coming in the chat. LuAnn, if there are women out there who are listening and they're on the early stages of their speaking journey and really their thought leadership journey, what piece of advice would you give to them as they're going forward?
First of all, belief comes first, right? You have to believe that you're worthwhile, that you have something to say, and you don't have to be tapped on the shoulder by somebody else. You can just decide that you can and you should. And the way Karen has said it, no, I don't need the 100 grand, the 6 figures and the 15 years. It's now. I feel it now. So, and the same with Tammy. She said it's now, and she dealt with and figured out how she would, have that tentative and that probably very difficult situation with her family. And so the thing is, if you're called to do it, then just know that you're called to do it for a reason. And then you got to figure out your point of view on it. Then you got to figure out why you, like, what do you have to say that's different on this? And this is what I find trips a lot of us up, right? And you taught me this, Carol, when you helped me 4 years ago now create my keynote speech, which, by the way, has served me a gabillion times, because I know that keynote so well that I slice it and dice it up for every event and opportunity I have. And I literally visualize the way you helped me construct it. I literally visualize the pieces, and depending on the audience, I just slice one piece out, put another piece in, come back and do whatever. So well worth it. And what you taught me was that the simplest stories in our life, which feel and seem to us possibly as inconsequential, are the way to reach somebody else. And you have to reach that somebody else. You have to connect with them. And so I think it's belief first, action, get qualified help and coaching on it, just like anything else. You can believe you can drive a car, but we'd love you to take a couple of lessons. You know what I'm saying? Just don't go out in a 2,000-pound machine. And so if you want to do your best, just like anything else you do, you invest in those who are expert to help you do it. But figure out your point of view and deliver it to the world, because we're all waiting to hear it.
Absolutely. Well, LuAnn, I think that's a great place for us to wrap up this panel. For those of you listening, don't forget you can connect with these panelists as well as our other speakers and panelists in the chat in the People tab. If you also go to the Summit website page, speakingyourbrand.com/summit, all the speakers and panelists are listed there with links to their websites and their social media. So connect with them there. I know we had some questions that we didn't get a chance to get to. So connect with them in social media and also in the chat. LuAnn, Tammy, Karen, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your wisdom and your experiences with our attendees. I am so grateful for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wasn't that fabulous? I am so grateful for Tammy Lally, LuAnn Nigara, and Dr. Karen Wilson for being on our panel at our summit in October 2020. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of LuAnn Nigara, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or LuAnn University, go to LuAnnNigara.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to WindowWorksNJ.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.